The day I climbed the warped wooden steps of the house my father left me, the rain didn't fall softly or sweetly like in a wistful memory. It came down in sheets, relentless and cold, soaking me through until it felt as though the sky itself had turned against me. Each drop struck hard, heavy, almost like judgment. Low clouds twisted angrily above, and the wind carried a bitterness that seemed aimed directly at me. I stopped at the front door, keys rattling in my grip. The shaking had nothing to do with the chill. It was anger, sharp, boiling anger that made me want to shout into the storm. But there was no one around to hear it. Just me, the rain, and the decaying remains of what used to be my childhood home. Meanwhile, across the state, my sister Grace was arranging boxes in the bright, sunlit entryway of her inheritance, a $950,000 ocean view home in Pacific Grove. The kind of place with marble countertops, glass railings, and an infinity pool. 2 days after the will was read, she had already posted a photo online, her smiling, wine glass in hand, with the caption, "Forever grateful, Dad." I hadn't shared anything. I couldn't. Who would I show? The peeling wallpaper? The sagging roof that looked ready to collapse? My so-called inheritance felt less like a gift and more like punishment. And yet, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The stench of mildew and dust hit me first, sharp and suffocating. The air felt heavy, thick with old arguments, unspoken truths, and years of silence. The floorboards groaned beneath my steps as if the house itself was resisting my presence. My name is Eli Carter. I'm 35, divorced, childless, and just barely surviving as a freelance graphic designer. Life hasn't exactly gone easy on me, though I can't claim I've always made wise choices either. But I loved my father, even when he made it nearly impossible. Loving him was like trying to hold on to smoke. There one moment, gone the next. Grace, though. Grace was his pride. The golden one. Straight-A student, med school graduate, flawless smile, flawless husband. She could vanish for months, forget his birthday, barely visit, and still in his eyes, she could do no wrong. She ended up with the mansion by the ocean. I was left with a crumbling husk of plaster and sorrow. But this isn't just about jealousy. Or, at least, not only jealousy. That first night, after dragging my suitcase inside, I sat on the dusty floor and chewed on a stale granola bar for dinner. Then I heard it. Beneath the moaning wind that slipped through the cracks, there it was. A dull thud. Then another. Heavy. Measured. Like footsteps. My chest tightened. I told myself it was just the house settling, nothing more. But then the noise stopped. And in the silence, I swear I heard a whisper, my name. I didn't sleep. Between the storm, the memories, and that voice, rest refused to come. By morning, sunlight pushed weakly through broken blinds, turning the floating dust into golden specters. Forcing myself to explore, I walked the rooms one by one. My old bedroom still wore the dark navy paint I'd insisted on at 13, though now it peeled in curling strips. The kitchen counter still held my mother's chipped teapot, untouched since she passed when I was 15. Everything unraveled after she died. Dad drank more. Grew unpredictable. In the attic, beneath a moth-eaten tarp, I found a box. Inside were faded photographs, a stack of letters, and a leather-bound journal with my father's name embossed in worn gold. The pages smelled of time, ink, and grief. As I turned them over, my breath caught. The journal wasn't about Grace. It was about me. Page after page, my father confessed the ways he had failed me. He admitted he saw too much of himself reflected in me, the same flaws, the same fears, and because he couldn't embrace those parts of himself, he didn't know how to love them in me either. He wrote about Mom's death too, how he carried the weight of blame for it. He couldn't look at me without seeing the night she fell. She had been rushing down the stairs to stop a fight between Grace and me. I had called Grace selfish. She had slammed the door. Mom had chased after us, lost her footing, and the fall snapped her neck before she even hit the floor. We never spoke of it again. Not once. But my father never let it go. And then, in those pages, he revealed something else. "This house holds the truth," he wrote. "I left it to Eli not because it's broken, but because he's strong enough to mend it, to uncover what's buried here. There's more hidden than just memories." At first, I didn't understand. Not until I stumbled on the false wall. It was in the basement, tucked behind the rusted furnace. A faint draft gave it away, a whisper of air where none should have been. The boards were newer than the rest, clumsily nailed in place. I pried them loose and uncovered a crawl space that led to a hidden room. Inside sat a heavy, locked metal box, its surface corroded with age. It took me 3 days, countless YouTube tutorials, and plenty of swearing, but eventually, I cracked it open. Inside were letters bound in ribbon, financial documents, deeds, a flash drive, and a folder addressed to me, for Eli. Only after I'm gone. My hands shook as I opened it. The letters were from my mother, written in the months before she died. She suspected my father was hiding something, not just money but properties, a secret business. She feared he was in danger. More than that, she was afraid for me. And she had been right. The flash drive contained recordings. My father's voice, confessing everything. He had laundered money through fake companies in the 90s, invested early in digital currency before it even had a name, and hidden the profits through a web of offshore accounts. He was worth an unimaginable amount. But here was the twist: he had already given most of it away. Through fake identities, hidden trusts, and quiet donations, he had spread the fortune to charities, strangers, and people he thought deserved another chance. What he left for me was what remained: a hidden account under the alias James Lockwood, $3.2 million. And there was more. Buried among the letters were legal documents proving that Grace had known all along. She had helped him set up the trust that secured her mansion. She was aware of his larger fortune but pressured him to keep her portion quiet. She believed I didn't deserve a share, that I'd waste it, that I wasn't worthy. And Dad had let her think that. But in the end, he left me the real inheritance. Not just the money but the truth. And maybe a chance at redemption. The following week, I hired an attorney. I created a foundation in my mother's name, dedicated to funding addiction recovery programs and shelters for single parents. I donated $500,000 to the community center where she used to volunteer. I began restoring the house, not to sell, but to live in. I hired local workers, men who had fallen on hard times just like I once had. Together, we built something from the ruins, and the process changed me. Grace and I didn't speak for months. Until one rainy afternoon, she appeared at my door. No perfect smile, no flawless facade, just tears streaking her face. "I didn't know he left this to you," she whispered, glancing around the freshly painted living room. "I thought I'd be the one with the real home." And for the first time, I saw her differently. Not as the untouchable golden child, but as someone who had also been afraid of losing love. Just like me. We stood in silence, the past between us like a cracked window that let the cold in. Finally, she said, "I don't want the money. I want a brother." And I believed her. So yes, my father left Grace a mansion worth nearly $1 million, while I inherited a rotting shell. But in truth, my house wasn't falling apart. It was keeping secrets. It was waiting to reveal them. And I realized that sometimes what feels like an ending is really just the start of something else. Pain doesn't always arrive cloaked in darkness. Sometimes it comes holding the keys to a better future, if we're willing to open the door. This time I did. And I didn't slam it shut.